Welcome to another episode of Adam's Everything EV. If you've been watching this channel, you've been kind of living the frustration vicariously about Fisker and what it's like to own an Ocean. But today we have an alternative that may eliminate all the bads and kind of make it perfect for travel around New York City. I have Micah from Joulez EV Rentals. Micah, thank you so much for being on this episode today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I want to just kind of let you introduce yourself to my audience and then kind of talk about what you've got going on with your business, and then these great opportunities that you've got with Fisker just kind of fell into your lap, and I'd love to hear about those. But first, let's talk about your background and how you got into the EV rental space.
Man, I guess the easiest way to say it is during COVID, ended up doing a longer road trip with a Tesla, and I saw a lot of challenges around that in particular. And my background is in transportation technology, so I very early on started my career at Apple. That evolved into working on my own software startup company that was focused on mass transit. So started here in New York City, but worked all over the world doing mass transit software, mobile apps in particular for trains, buses, ferries, for people to be able to get on and off, both the ticketing, trip planning, all that fun stuff. And shifted away from that right before COVID ended up happening. So always had kind of a fascination just with transportation more generally and like how technology and mobility kind of intersect with each other. And wanted to take an EV on a long ride. Like many New Yorkers, they do not own a car. So, it was kind of like, I'm going to go rent a car. So where did I go? I went on Turo. And this was actually back when Turo was not even allowed in New York State at that point because they hadn't passed the law yet to allow for Turo to operate here. And went up to Connecticut, grabbed the car, really nice owner, super chill, walked me through all the details of the car. I'd been in Teslas before, but this is the first time I've ever driven one, and I wanted to pay close attention because I'm going to be driving it all the way down to Southern Virginia. So wanted to make sure that I knew what exactly I was getting myself into. And so ended up driving that all the way down. No major issues. But the thing that just became very obvious to me was, man, I'm a tech person with a tech background, and this is a pretty tech-centric type of driving experience. And my immediate thought went to my Aunt Barb. And my Aunt Barb, God bless her, not the most tech-savvy lady ever. And I'll have to send the clip of this discussion to her after I talk a little bit about her. But no, I mean, she's, it's not that she doesn't understand kind of very basic. She uses a computer, she uses an iPhone, like she understands a lot of basics, but it's just, you need a lot more hand-holding getting into a lot of these EVs, especially ones where so much of the interaction revolves around the center console screen. And because that is your interface for interacting with the car. And that's just such a fundamental shift. Even now, as we look at like the traditional OEMs, like the Toyotas of the world and the Hyundais and Kias, it's actually a pretty similar car to what you find with a gas car. It just happens to be charged with electricity. Whereas, with a Fisker, with a Lucid, with the Rivian, with a Tesla, they're all just relying so much on that center console screen. And so you got to get adapted to that experience. And so part of it was like, man, you need to have a rental car company that can really support people on their journey so they can almost be like that IT support. Like my background, my very first job working at Apple was a Mac genius. And I completely kind of went back to that mindset of you need to have somebody, when you're giving somebody a smartphone for the first time and they've never touched a smartphone ever, have some sort of support, somewhere they can go, somebody they can talk to. And so that's really kind of what inspired me to say, I think there needs to be a better way, because you look at the rental car industry, and certainly history has now proven me right over the past couple of years, of if you give them a bunch of EVs and they just say like, here's the keys, there's the car, good luck, you're going to have a lot of very frustrated customers. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were thinking about this from the very basics of, how do you support new technology and how can we make sure that this is a better experience? Because I believe in EVs, eventually becoming, the dominant vehicle on the road. And I really think it's fascinating to kind of see these cars that are so tech-centric and everything you can do with them. So anyway, there's a long-winded story of me saying like, this is what inspired me ultimately to get into this business and try to create a better customer experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think you really touched on something that every person has gone through that either has driven an EV or owns one now, and that's that initial frustration or the learning curve, whatever you want to call it. I also want to talk about New York City. Not a lot of car ownership, like you said. I mean, obviously there's a ton of cars, but really what you're doing in NYC is you drive when you have to, and the rest of the time you get around by Uber. Can you talk about the costs there and what Joulez kind of brings to the table as far as a benefit or an alternative?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the one thing. And we've gotten a number of these EVs at a relatively low cost, including these Fiskers that we've been able to partner with American Lease on. And just being able to, at a low cost entry point, be able to put these vehicles on the road for people that they want to go upstate. Summertime, maybe they want to go down to the Jersey Shore or out to Long Island. And so just having that capability of providing a car for a lot of folks. And we've started doing more in the film industry too, which is quite big in New York as well as LA. So working with Netflix, working with HBO, and supporting their production needs with the different vehicles they have. A lot of these companies, they all want to go sustainable, and the challenge that they run into is they don't always just want a Tesla Model 3, which is kind of their only option when they end up going to a Hertz of the world or the Polestar 2. Like they just don't have a lot of great car options. We have Rivians, we have Lucids. I actually love the Fisker now. And the 2.2 software has made a massive difference because I was one of the very first owners of a Fisker here in New York City. And I remember the frustration of like, what the hell is wrong with this car, basically? Like, it's just, it was maddening. And I just thought, how could they have put out a car with so many bugs and challenges? And ultimately, it ended up being their undoing. But as they have progressively improved the software, and now with 2.2, I think they've done a solid job. I think these cars actually are enjoyable to drive around in. I've done longer trips now where I'm able to go 200, 300 miles. And the beauty of it is these Fiskers actually have great range. At 360 miles, you end up having to get into a Tesla Model S or an X or a Lucid or a higher end Rivian to be able to even get close to that. So, I mean, the one thing that these Fiskers have going for them is the great battery range that they're providing. And since we were able to get them at such a low cost, I think it's a amazing value proposition to any customers here in New York. And then we're also offering it out in Los Angeles too.
So let's say I want to go to the Jersey Shore. What's that cost look like?
We're talking about, like, if you're just a day trip, it depends on obviously if it's weekday versus weekend, but I mean our rates range from $45 to $55 on the lower end. Maybe if it's a peak day, you're talking about closer to $80, $90 a day, but very reasonable in terms of what you look at in the marketplace. Hertz, Avis, especially if it's like a Thanksgiving weekend or something like that, you'll definitely find rates that are $120, $130 a day. And we can get close to that, but we generally try to, beat out the competition and make sure that we're priced competitively and, provide a great experience on top of that. And a lot of times, the type of guests that we're getting are people that want to be able to have a unique experience as part of, renting a car. And they're not just kind of getting a generic, a vehicle that they could pick up at Hertz or an Avis.
So not only are you really basically beating the cost of an Uber for sure, you're beating the cost of your rental competition. And this kind of makes it the most convenient and user-friendly and easy way to travel kind of in and outside of New York City, right?
Yeah, I mean, just an Uber. I regularly fly out of Newark, New Jersey, which is one of the 3 regional airports here in the New York City area. And for me to do an Uber from the Bronx, most of the time is between $90 to $120 one way. So you figure a round trip alone that you're talking about $200+ that you're easily going to end up spending just to be able to go on that one trip. So if you're going to end up being more in New Jersey, more in the suburbs. I understand if people are right in the center of Manhattan, it probably doesn't make as much sense because you end up taking the subway around. You end up walking a lot within the city itself. But anything kind of around the city, absolutely people are going to be looking for an alternative that allows them to be able to easily get from point A to point B. And historically it's been pretty expensive to be able to do that, so we think that we're offering a really great opportunity for people.
I saw on your website Model S, Lucid Air, Model X, Mercedes EQS if you really want to step your game up. So you guys have a lot of options. Walk me through like what a rental process looks like, because I know that there are people that are going to want to at least give this a shot, because really that's the best thing about this is you can just grab it for a day, get whatever you need done. Maybe you need to leave the city, drive around a little bit, and then you're back to not having to worry about parking and all that. So yeah, can you walk me through that process?
Yeah, so when we also do curbside delivery too for a lot of folks. So if they don't want to necessarily come to our garage, we have our 2 main garages in the South Bronx near Yankee Stadium, and then the other location over in Brooklyn in the Dumbo neighborhood, with another location coming in Long Island City here shortly. So depending on when this video ends up going live, might already be live within Long Island City. But being able to offer the capability of just selecting the garage, selecting the car, you see the daily rate. It's very transparent pricing, includes the taxes, everything. Like we try to not have any hidden fees. We do have to provide insurance of some sort. Sometimes guests come to us with insurance. In LA, we generally have a lot of people who already have insurance because they might own a car at home and they're traveling in. Whereas New Yorkers, because they don't necessarily own a car, they may not have insurance. So we do have to sell them insurance just to make sure that we have the additional coverages. But once you select that, especially if you've already rented with us, it's a very swift process. The initial process, though, of we do need to verify your driver's license, make sure it's real, make sure that you're you. And then people are able to come and grab the car at the designated time and go off with it. Now, we've even had people, a lot of it we can do remotely. So we have a remote team actually that is able to validate people. And so somebody could book the car in advance. Maybe their schedule is such that they can't get there till 10, 11 p.m. at night. Great. We provide access to the garage, and then we provide, it's called Key Cafe, but it allows you to be able to remotely unlock the key that then allows you access to the car. We've also got pins on the car too to prevent people from just being able to drive off with them. But yeah, I mean, we've got a really nice setup that just makes it very straightforward for somebody to go onto the website and then jump in the car and go.
Also, you've got a mileage included in the rental, right? There's at least a starter amount of mileage before you even pay for miles on top of that. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, this is not like a pay per mile type of thing. Generally, and we try to be in the 200-mile range per day. And that for most people, with a lot of the travel they do, and especially just kind of thinking about the convenience of EVs, not everybody's going to want to drive down to Florida or drive down to Virginia. It's more of a regional destination. And one day, we normally don't find people using it much more than 200 miles. And it's, again, a nominal amount of, 30, 40 cents an additional mile if you end up going over that, just to cover our depreciation costs, make sure that we're not end up eating that. Because we have had people that amazingly have put like 4,000 miles in 1 month renting with the cars too. So you just want to make sure that you've got the coverage that you need. And for most people, the 200 miles absolutely covers you. And then that's per day. So if you're driving 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, then it just exponentially increases from there.
Anybody can go to any car rental and rent an EV. What Joulez is offering is the unique experience of having like that personal service. And then obviously this Fisker thing's a big opportunity. And that came from American Lease. Can you talk about that partnership and how you were able to work that out?
Yeah. So, funny enough, it was from your channel that I ended up seeing the discussion about like what was going on with the bankruptcy. Of course, I was concerned because we ended up buying Fisker. And so we wanted to really kind of understand like, all right, what does this mean for us? What's going to be with the value of the car? We, of course, bought that car at peak value and, share many of the frustrations that many Fisker owners do with everything that ended up happening. But American Lease happens to be just down the street from us in the Bronx. And so we just reached out to them. Funny enough, I had someone who was a friend of mine who had used to work at Uber, who had worked with the management at American Lease. And I said, hey, could you connect me up with these guys? And he did. And we had a kind of informal meeting, just kind of talking about what Joulez is doing, what they're doing, get to know you kind of thing. And eventually that led into a larger conversation about how can we work together and let's potentially create a joint venture structure that brings together what American Lease is doing for consumer rentals. Because at the end of the day, as many cars as they end up picking up, they're not going to all be able to go out to Uber and Lyft drivers right away. So they don't want the cars to just sit here. And so this becomes an alternative way for them to be able to put them on the road and make sure that they're not just making payments on cars, even though they got them obviously relatively cheap. They're still having to make payments on the cars. And when you talk about hundreds of cars and then thousands of cars, that starts to add up. So let's see if we can put them to work and do some consumer rentals.
For those who are just here for this video and you're new to the channel, Fisker offered a vehicle. They went bankrupt. American Lease, which is a company that rents to Uber and Lyft drivers, picked up basically the ones that were left. And then now they have these vehicles, and you've just taken the opportunity just based on location. And I appreciate the plug on the channel. I'm glad you've gotten some value out of it to be able to connect with them and then offer this. Now, we want to talk about the benefits of these Oceans specifically. Obviously, they're comfortable. They're pretty definitely large passenger space wise. They offer a really competitive cargo space as well. And what just real quickly, what's your favorite thing about being able to offer this Ocean as a rental?
If it's summertime, I do actually like the California mode. Most people don't realize like the Teslas have no sunroof. So there is no way to like pull back the shade and kind of go out for a nice fun drive. And when you talk about a sunroof, it means like a full on like that thing goes all the way back. So you have like full on sky, and then you're able to bring down the back window and the side windows, and it's a fun car to drive. And again, I had all the frustrations of the 1.0, 1.1 software, and thank God the car didn't end up getting bricked as part of some of the experiences that people ended up having. But now that it's finally updated to 2.2, I really actually appreciate it. And it's unfortunate that Fisker wasn't able to produce the software where it is now a year ago, because I think they would be in a totally different place. They wouldn't have gotten the bad reviews. I think customers would have been a lot happier with the cars. I think you would have had a fan base that would have been very enthusiastic kind of about spreading the word, because they're nice design cars. Like not to knock any of the competition, but definitely some of the EVs that are out there kind of feel like they're cheaply made. And the Fiskers actually, with the outsourced partner that they worked with over in Austria, was it Magna, I believe. I haven't had any issues with like things kind of falling apart, flaking off. And I mean, if that's happening in the first 10,000 miles, think of what happens when you get 50, 60,000 miles on it for a rental car. And I feel like this Fisker is actually going to hold up pretty well as a result of that.
And so cost, you guys are offering this probably at one of your lower rental tiers. It has a lot of space. The comfort is great. It's got great power, over 400 horsepower. And like you said, that 360 miles of range, which is up there with your Lucid Rivian Model S.
Yeah.
And
it's real range too. I want people to realize that sometimes you get in some of these EVs and they tell you a certain range and it's almost like kind of a 20% variance. Whereas I've generally found with the Fisker that what they're saying is the range is the actual range that you get. There's not much of a variance there.
Yeah, the ownership experiences that that have been shared with me are 300 real world miles, kind of no matter what. And then, even more from there, just kind of goes up from there. So it's a really, really good experience. And like I said, the hardest part about these Fiskers has literally been the ownership. But this is just, you rent the vehicle, it's charged up, you can get out of town, and with 360 miles of range, that's like a round trip daily. You go out of town for a day, you come back, all the mileage is paid for, so you get your insurance, you get your daily rental rate, and that's probably going to cover a majority of your renters. And let's talk about that price. Where are you looking? I know obviously this is going to depend on the day and the weekend and whether there's a Yankees game and all those things, obviously, but. Talk about what kind of rates you're looking at on a daily for these Oceans.
Yeah, and I kind of mentioned before, we're in the $45 to $55 range for entry level, and that's around where we would expect kind of for entry level. So middle of the week, somebody needs to go and run errands, get out of the city for a quick bit. That's definitely going to be something that we would end up doing. And then, on the other side of it, you'd be talking about like $100, maybe $110 a day that you'd end up looking at. And again, that's like Thanksgiving, peak time. I literally have gone into our garage amazed at like, I have no vehicles here. It's Thanksgiving. Like everybody's just completely taking their cars because a lot of New Yorkers, again, they leave town and they go to different places around the region to go and see family and friends. So we just end up having no cars.
I want to highlight too that this is really a great worry-free way to have that freedom of ownership without the ownership. And the Fisker Ocean, I'm an owner myself, or I was, and the anxiety of the ownership is really what got me out, because I did sell mine, but I didn't sell it because I didn't like it. I love the look of it. I love the comfort of it. I took a road trip to North Carolina, like over 1,000 miles. Didn't have any issues with the car driving itself, any of that. And it was just the fact that I knew that anything could go wrong, but you guys have got that covered. You've got American Lease right down the street. They're maintaining the vehicles. They've got everything set up. You're taking all the risk away, and you can just enjoy an experience with an EV. And finally, the rates you're talking about are very low, but because we reached out, we spoke to each other before this interview. You've got a code, and it's Adams EV, no spaces, no apostrophes, 15% discount. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Want to make sure that any of the viewers from your channel, if they're thinking about Fisker, if they're fans of Fisker, Maybe they were an early owner and they didn't end up actually executing the purchase of the vehicle. Love to have them come and check out the vehicle, try it out. It's going to be a unique experience. I've actually said this before that I kind of see it as the modern day DeLorean. People ended up kind of falling in love with it and became a cult classic, particularly because of Back to the Future. But I think this actually has a lot of broad appeal, and like any limited product, like now all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of people that want to try it out at least and experience it. And I hope they come and check us out.
Well, the challenges of the city, obviously, charging is a challenge in every major city, are kind of overstepped by the ocean. The ocean kind of negates all that. It says, I have enough range to get back and forth. You can obviously drive this for multiple days on the 360 miles of range. It's got the comfort you need. It's got the space. I mean, there's so much space in the back seat of this car. It's really hard to, you can't look at the footprint and say, okay, I know how big it is inside. It's shocking when you get in. So Adams EV is the code. You guys have a big fleet of rental cars. DriveJoulez.com, is that right?
That is correct. You can also go to Joulez.com. We own the official Joulez.com name too, but DriveJoulez.com is where everybody goes to.
And it's right on the hat, Joulez. Check out his hat. And I'm sure if you meet up with Micah or any of his staff, they'll be happy to decorate you with some merchandise as well. Micah, I cannot thank you enough for coming on here. It sounds to me like you have all of the parts needed to handle this really well. You've got a background in technology. You're in New York City, and you're located right near American Lease, where you've been able to take advantage of basically a really good buy for them and pass that cost along to the customer. And in my opinion, Micah, the reason I wanted to have you on the channel, just so people know, and also I agree with this and I endorse this so much that I'm not even taking any affiliate cost from this. The discount is just me letting you know I really believe in what Micah's doing here. And I think this is the best way to travel in and out of New York City. So if I can have somebody, let's say I rent, I'm in a hotel outside the city. Can you come to me, get me a Joulez Fisker Ocean? I can drive in and out of the city, right? And then maybe drop it back off to you and ride a bus back out of it. Is that something you guys can do?
Yeah. So, and just to be clear, there is a delivery fee. So just
Sure, of course.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, if somebody just wants door-to-door service, we're able to provide that. Certainly, we get a lot of people, they have families where it's just complicated to try to get to the place where the rental cars are at. So they can just pay for somebody to deliver the car. Depending on where it's at, it could be anywhere from $80 round trip to $150, even $180 round trip. And that's very far out for where we might end up delivering to. But we try to kind of be within the 15 to 20 mile radius of the city.
Okay. And so, well, once again, those numbers don't really intimidate me because that's just a ride to the airport in an Uber or a Lyft, right? So this is really an affordable way to get an EV. You don't have to worry about finding a gas station, which also is hard in the city. There's not gas stations on every corner like where I live. Every 5 seconds there's a gas station here. But, New York City is really completely easy to navigate with this opportunity. Mike, is there anything else you'd like to add? I want to thank you so much for coming on here, letting people know what you've got, and allowing me the opportunity to let my viewers know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to your point about gas stations, I would just mention too, a lot of our guests, particularly if they're in a vehicle like a Fisker, they're charging at Electrify America, which had issues, although I have to say they've done a really good job this year of improving their service quality, increasing the number of charging stations, fixing the ones that were having problems. You just see a noticeable increase in the number of charging stations that are available from Electrify America, which is great. Within New York City itself, there's also another company that called Gravity Charging, and most amazing chargers ever. There's a guy, it's a startup company, but they can go up to 500 kilowatt. And the fastest charging you can find anywhere in New York City is right off of 42nd Street, which is actually really close to, we have a secondary location at Columbus Circle. So one thing people notice on our website, they might select Columbus Circle. That's more of a staging location. So people are essentially paying a delivery fee to be able to have that vehicle brought down to Columbus Circle, and it'll usually come out of one of our outer borough garages. But if they are returning the vehicle and they want to be able to return it charged, that is the most convenient location that they could potentially go to. I've gone over there and had a full charge within about 15 minutes. So a lot of people will utilize that, and it's been a really great service for New Yorkers.
So just to clarify, you can go to one of the regular pickup locations, grab your Fisker, take off for the day, for the weekend, bring it back to Columbus Circle and charge right beside there on the way in. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, just a few blocks down south.
My wife is so scared of finding places to park, but you're taking a lot of the worry away. Micah, thank you so much. DriveJoulez.com, Joulez.com. Micah, CEO, thank you so much for joining me. This has just been great talking to you and giving everybody the opportunity. I'll put the website right on the screen and also the link to Adams EV, the code for 15% off when you rent. Micah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, smash the like button.
Thank you.